Hi, I'm Leo from the Geek Legion of Doom, and welcome to the Top 10 Generation 1 Transformers list. This list is based on many iterations of Transformers lore, from the comics and TV show right through to the movies and video games. This is a personal list of favourite characters, so let's get started. Number 10. My number 10 pick isn't strictly a Transformer at all. Created by writer Simon Furman and artist Jeff Sr. whilst working for Marvel Comics, who at the time had the Transformers license. Furman craftily made a comic strip of Death's Head before including him in the Transformers comic proper, thus keeping his creative rights. Death's Head is a robotic bounty hunter that was introduced into the UK Transformers comic, as it was produced weekly rather than monthly and they had to create original content. Death's Head has had various clashes with both Autobot and Decepticon alike and has quickly become a fan favourite. He cannot transform but is a robot of similar size and has various detachable weapons and a bad attitude. After his tenure in the Transformers comic, he appeared in the Doctor Who comic, where he was shrunk down to human size. Since then, he's appeared in his own comic, as well as guest starring with other Marvel heroes. He was killed off to make room for an updated version, but has cropped up once or twice since then. I still hold out for a return proper. Number 9. Omega Supreme. An Autobot who is often depicted as a giant transformer with vast strength and overwhelming firepower. When he transforms, Omega splits into 3 components. His body becomes a laser cannon tank, which acts as a perimeter patrol for the rocket base formed by his legs and backpack, which is in turn capable of launching his 3rd component, a rocket formed from his arms. He has various origins depending on what you go with. In the animated series, he was the last and mightiest of the Guardian robots, who were designed to protect the Transformers from threats before the Civil War broke out. In early Marvel Comics history, he was depicted as the Autobot response to the Constructicons. Again, his origin will vary depending on later versions as well. As powerful as he is, he's often portrayed as slow and uses a lot of fuel. I see him as quite a tragic figure who is almost lonely. Number 8. Sunstreaker. The twin brother of Sideswipe, another Autobot who, like him, also turned into a Lamborghini Countach. He's described as the ultimate egotist, being notoriously difficult to work with, which is actually the reason why I like him, as he almost should be a Decepticon. He isn't particularly noble and is often noted to be cold in battle, which is what I find fascinating about his character. He had little prominence in the original comics or the animated TV show. However, later versions of the comics, including the ones released by RUW, he has a lot more development. Number 7. Ravage. The stealthy, shadowy Ravage best operates alone. A creature of the night, Ravage performs most of his actions in darkness, both literally and figuratively. Like other Decepticon cassettes, Ravage is connected to Soundwave, although the strength of this link varies from continuity to continuity, appearing as strongest in the original animated series. In the Marvel Comics, Ravage was intelligent and cunning despite his growling, animalistic portrayal. In the animated series, notably lacking the power of speech, he appeared to be the most prominent out of Soundwave cassettes. Ravage has actually been fairly prominent in most iterations of Gen 1 Transformers, and has always been portrayed as a capable warrior despite his relevant small size. Number 6. Thundercracker. Thundercracker in the top 10, you ask? Arguably the least interesting of all the original 3 Seekers, while Starscream had much more prominent role and Skywarp had a better colour scheme and better powers. Why is Thundercracker in this list? Well, this will be because of his recent stories in IDW, which has made Thundercracker one of the most interesting Decepticons ever. In the comics, Thundercracker is portrayed as a rare thing, a noble Decepticon, one who doesn't see the need for pointless destruction or the killing of innocent lives, at least compared to the other Decepticons. So much so, we've actually seen him aid the Autobots in defiance of his orders. However, he still sees himself as a loyal Decepticon. This makes him a fascinating character to read about. Number 5. Jetfire. Also known as Skyfire in the animated series. As with most Transformers, he has multiple origins depending on what source you go by. However, they all have one thing in common, an early allegiance with Decepticons. which has only served him to convince him that he should join the Autobots. In the Marvel Comics, he was constructed by Shockwave on Earth to be one of his new Decepticon troops, given life by the Creation Matrix. In the animated series, on Cybertron, before the war, Jetfire was a scientist and an explorer working with Starscream. Together they investigated an uncharted planet where they failed to find any signs of intelligent life. Jetfire wished to scrutinise the planet further. Moving in close to the planet, a polar wind swept him up and buried him beneath the Arctic ice. This, of course, was planet Earth. Even in the live-action movie, Jetfire was portrayed as an elderly Decepticon. In his original toy form, he looked a lot like one of the Japanese Gundam robots. His facial appearance is significantly different depending on what media you look at, going from a simple red optical slit visor to a more human face. He's one of the more larger Autobots, and sometimes he's depicted as having trust issues with other Autobots, mainly due to his Decepticon past. Number 4. Megatron. Megatron is the founder of the Decepticon uprising and their most feared leader. Bob Budiansky, the writer of the Marvel comic series, stated that Hasbro originally took issue with the name, saying it sounded far too frightening. Budiansky responded that he was the lead villain and that was the point. Hasbro later agreed with his reasoning and approved the name. Megatron's origins depend on the source material vary greatly, from a champion gladiator in Cybertron to the general of the Transformer military. His ult mode, for the most part, takes the form of a pistol, but he has been both a tank and a space fighter. He carries with him a fusion cannon, which is one of the most powerful weapons in the Transformers arsenal. Megatron is absolutely ruthless and has literally no compassion or pity. He is both feared and respected by Autobot and Decepticon alike. Grimlock. Grimlock is the leader and most fearsome member of the Dinobots. Grimlock can be cold, merciless and contemptuous for all he considers beneath him, such as human beings and at times even Autobots, including Optimus Prime. Nevertheless, he's a valiant warrior whose actions command respect for all those who are witness to them. Grimlock and his fellow Dinobots' origins vary wildly depending on what you're looking at. In the Marvel Comics, the Ark originally crashed to Earth, and Teletran 1, who assumed that the Dinobots, dinosaurs were the dominant life form, scanned them and made them their alternate forms. The only other major difference with Grimlock is his intellect. Sometimes he's written to be very intelligent and strategically minded, whilst other times he's seen as dumb and brutish, and others still almost childlike. However, the common factor with Grimlock is his power. He's one of the few, and possibly the only other Transformer that isn't a giant at least, to go toe-to-toe with either Megatron or Optimus Prime. His ult mode is a fire-breathing T-Rex. Soundwave. Soundwave is one of the most recognisable characters from the original Transformers line. He held an alternate mode as a cassette recorder, and possesses a distinctive monotone computerised voice. His alternate form, which involves apparent loss of mass, is that of an earthly cassette player. Within the tape compartment, which is a chest in his robot mode, he stores a variety of Decepticon spies, all of which take the form of a cassette. These spy characters include Ravage, Laserbeak, Buzzsaw, Ratbat, Rumble and Frenzy, among others. In the original Transformers cartoon, his most prominent role in Transformers fiction was of Megatron's right-hand robot, frequently sent on important reconnaissance missions with his cassettes, often playing key roles in schemes against the Autobots. Like much of the original 1984 cast of Decepticons, Soundwave played a much smaller role in the Marvel comic book series than did in the cartoon. He quietly and efficiently served loyally, first under Megatron, even sending Ravage and the Insecticons to derail talks between Autobots and Ronald Reagan at one point during the 1985 Transformers UK annual. When Megatron and Shockwave were both briefly believed to be deceased, he assumed leadership of the Decepticons during Optimus Prime's Crisis of Command, and then at the Dinobot Hunt story arcs, manipulating events to weaken the Autobot leadership and cause maximum casualties. He even had his own letters page in the early days of the comics. Soundwave would always be a fairly major player in Decepticon affairs in later comics and games and TV shows. Number 1, Optimus Prime. Could it be anyone else? He's depicted as a brave, powerful, wise, compassionate leader who puts the talent of improving the universe around him. Optimus is portrayed as having a strong sense of justice and righteousness. He's dedicated himself to the protection of life, particularly the inhabitants of Earth. One of Prime's most notable characteristics, above all the continuities, is his unswaying commitment to the leadership by example. The animated series of Optimus Prime is depicted as a straightforward, wise and upbeat battlefield general. However, in the Marvel Comics, in addition to these characteristics, Prime is secretly plagued by self-doubt and conflicted by the sense of pacifism that often makes him an extremely reluctant warrior. The first generation Optimus Prime transformed into a Kenworth K100 cab truck. With his chest is a mystic talisman known as the Autobot Matrix of Leadership, or the Creator Matrix, carried by all Autobot leaders. Prime has been compared to King Arthur from classic literature, and is perhaps the most recognisable of all the Transformers. Well, that concludes our top 10 list. What did you think of the list, and how does it compare to your own? Leave us a comment and leave us your own top 10 list below. See you next time.